action and see which player is going to move on as we get into this game number 1. You can already see that Will is going to be starting things off with that Regieleki that we were looking at, maybe saying, hey, you might be able to make an appearance here, and that Porygon 2. And from Miguel's side of the field, we've got Rillaboom and Urshifu, that Urshifu Rapid Strike that definitely doesn't want to be looking at this Regieleki right now.
Absolutely not. But Regieleki is quite frail and has been known to get knocked out early on just by taking a really big attack its way. So a tough one, I'd argue, to play perfectly in the face of this Rillaboom. The Rillaboom certainly has options to just say, you're frail, I can ignore your best in class, literally, speed, and work around that. So it could be a bit dicey. And Regieleki with Porygon always baffles me, because Porygon usually wants to play a slower game, and Regieleki is just there trying to, go crazy and just attack things first.
Yeah, well, Grassy Glide does so much damage with the critical hit that, wow-wee, that's not going to be a super safe Porygon 2 at all. But you did see that Volt Switch come out from Regieleki just to allow Will to kind of maneuver around and reposition his Pokemon, sending out Landorus in that Regielecky's stead. But what we still have yet to see is how this rest of this turn is going to play out for this Urshifu as well as this Porygon 2 for Will.
Right, the Urshifu's really the one deciding what to do, and this Porygon is going to be struggling, I think it's fair to say, against the Urshifu. The typing's just not there, and the double up into Porygon 2, an early lead carved out right there for Miguel. So Will, a little bit on the back foot, I'd argue, off the leads on this one, but certainly got tools to try and fight back. That said, this Rillaboom dealing huge amounts of damage with the Grassy Glide is going to be a conundrum, especially if you want to bring something like Regieleki in safely.
Yeah, well, the thing about Miguel's Rillaboom is that it is running that choice band, so it's locked into Grassy Glide right now, but it also means it's doing so much more damage because of that choice band attached to it. So that's why we got a chance to see such big explosive damage right off the bat, and then that Urshifu had enough to be able to finish it off.
Yeah, and then Will's limited in his ability to control the terrain as well, which is certainly a problem. People haven't forgotten about how good Rillaboom is from the development of the season. As soon as we got access to Grassy Glide and obviously grassy terrain as well, people haven't forgotten that when they're team building, and it still finds a way to just carve out these advantages and say, well, I get to move first. I really like Choice Band Rillaboom myself. I think it's a fantastic Pokemon that just deals a fantastic amount of damage, and that is something that really has to be considered. When you're building a team around Regieleki, it is nice to consider bringing in electric terrain, and I think here that would have been huge if he could have some terrain control and at least try and fight back in this one. But it's something that you can't change now, and you've just got to try your best to come back from this Landorus. Dynamaxing is probably one of the better ways to try and do it.
Absolutely. You saw Will be able to use Dynamax Landorus to great fruition in the last series. We got a chance to see Will in our winners round 2, but now it's all about kind of making sure this Regieleki can do its job here to help support this Landorus. And so you'll see the Electro Web come out and connect onto at least the Rillaboom here. Because of the detect from the Urshifu, it's not going to be able to connect there, but this Max Airstream goes through the detect, and it is going to do a significant chunk of damage.
Yeah, and if the targeting was a little bit different there, I think the Rillaboom would have got knocked out, and then I definitely think the turns get a little bit different after that. But the Urshifu very wisely detecting there, saying, no, I don't want to deal with this, and I'll just let you kind of try and fight back a little bit differently. That said, I think, the Rillaboom's still in a little bit of danger. There's only so far it can go with something like the Grassy Glide into, neutral hits, even though it's still a whole lot of damage. And the Regieleki holding on certainly helps there. But the Electro Webs and the difference when you get the max moves coming through, really, really big here.
Well, it is going to be Rillaboom, it's going to be Urshifu going back into its Pokeball for the Indeedee. We'll be able to reset the terrain again, but the terrain is still in Miguel's favor when it comes down to using the Rillaboom and using that Indeedee respectively. The Regieleki for Will is going to go for the Protect as another Max Airstream comes out, and it's going to be into the Indeedee. Wow, that's a lot of damage, but still not enough for the knockout. And Adam, what are you thinking here? Should this have been a Rillaboom? attack.
It's a tough one to see. Like, that landing in there is certainly problematic, and but the Regieleki's safe as well. So that said, I mean, the Rillaboom's just lost its terrain, so it's now just a whole lot less threatening, I think, from you know, the scope of not having the grassy terrain.
Yeah, you can't really go for super effective grassy glides now with the boosted damage coming out and the priority as well. So you have to, in this position, if you want to keep this Rillaboom on the field with the choice band attached to it, you just still have to click grassy glide and hope that's going to be enough to knock out this Regieleki. Right,
that's your best option, is just try and make sure you can weave in that knockout there. But this Landorus is still very, very healthy. I mean, still in a great position. That said, Miguel's not Dynamaxed yet, and I think that's going to give him a very strong potential end game here. You know, as we try and kind of play through this one.
Yeah, indeed, he goes for the Protect, as now we see a Max Quake come out from Landorus from Will's side of the field. This time Will go into the Rillaboom, but it's still not enough to be able to secure the knockout. But you got this special defense boost here, so that's going to be at least a little bit helpful. But Grassy Glide now, and that's going to be enough to knock out this Regieleki. We will see Will down to his final 2 Pokemon.
Yeah, he's just traded that Regieleki away by not landing kind of another attack into the Rillaboom there, and showing his last Pokemon here should kind of lay out the roadmap, if you're Miguel, on what you need to do to win this game. It being Torkoal and seeing it without the Venusaur, I think his Torkoal has done a lot of work for him throughout the tournament, and it pulled him through a lot of some of the earlier games that we saw from him. But right now, it's, you know, it's going to struggle a little bit, I think. Especially with some of the options in the back. Yes, it might be able to kind of tidy up here, but yeah, you're down to your last 2. You're down a Dynamax too, which is not always ideal when, you know, the Dynamax is available from Miguel.
You can see one of those prime Dynamax users coming out onto the field now as Rillaboom goes back into its Pokeball. It will be Colossal now joining Indeedee on the field as Indeedee goes for Follow Me, just to be able to draw attention away, potentially, if it is going to be a double into that Colossal slot. But it is the Rock Slide. Colossal is actually going to take that one pretty handedly. Will get the weakness policy boost, as that was a super effective attack. But now it's Torkoal's time to move, and it will be using the Earth Power into the Indeedee.
Yep, the Indeedee felled there, and Colossal's in a unique position here that, you know, it's got a very clear partner available for it who could come in and just set up that, you know, that steam engine, but it's already taken a good amount of damage from the rock slide there, and may not be the safest thing to try and do. Of course, there's max airstream boost to consider as well on this Landorus, so yeah, it's a tough situation. Maybe this Rillaboom just has to buy some time, pad the game out a bit, get control of the terrain again, get control by switching back in, and just try and kind of tidy up. But there's no easy way to switch up the weather here. The Torkoal, if it, you know, lands an attack, is going to be dealing huge damage, and that definitely limits. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because the weather limits the damage that gets done when you try and activate your own steam engine. But then it also boosts the damage after the steam engine's gone off.
Yeah, it's such an interesting predicament to be in here. Does Miguel still decide to go for the Gigantamax onto the Colossal? I mean, Urshifu's in the back too, that could be able to take the Dynamax factor, but I just feel like in this position you were kind of banking on Colossal being your Dynamax Pokemon, and it's already sitting at you know, 2/3 of its health about, and maybe a little less than that. So it's not super safe to be able to go for that Gigantamax. But
I think I think at some point you have to Dynamax the Colossal, even if you maybe protect this turn and get through it. It is the focal point. The Rillaboom's super low, and some of the benefits that you get from Urshifu just being in a regular form are too good to pass up. So he's definitely got to kind of play it slow and steady a little bit here and try and work through the game that way. So yeah, it's not the easiest situation, but it's definitely a win condition if it doesn't take too much damage before that time.
Well, Colossal does get that Gigantamax factor, so It's about time that we see Miguel start to hit the gas a little bit and push some pressure onto Will's side of the field. But we will see Rillaboom move first. It's going to be the Grassy Glide into the Landorus, which does so much. But a Rock Slide, too, is going to be able enough to knock out that Rillaboom and bring that Colossal super low. But this Colossal does get a chance to fire off a huge attack now, which we did see was targeting down that Torkoal. And with that Weakness Policy boost, that is going to be enough to get the knockout onto the Torkoal, which leaves Will with one final Pokemon, that Landorus.
Yeah, and the Landorus is also going to be struggling to stick around because of the Gmax Volcalith, right? You know, it's just taking damage every single turn. There's a little bit of recovery there for the Colossal, and you just can't knock this Colossal out because of that. So that's the perfect turn for this Colossal. It did find the opportunity it needed. Didn't even need Steam Engine in this game. Was a little concerned that Landorus might just go for it, but I mean the Landorus is super low, and Urshifu just needs to buy a little bit of time. I think both these Pokemon are just going to buy the correct amount of time and let the Gmax move do the work.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly why you use something like Gmax Volcalith, right? Because it has that ability to deal that extra bit of damage to those Pokemon that are not immune to it. And so you can just double protect here if you're Miguel, and then there it goes. Landorus does get knocked out to that final bit of damage coming out from Gmax Volcalith. So very, very smart endgame played by Miguel, but it honestly felt like it came down to the wire for this very first game of the series.
Yeah, I mean, both trainers had a game plan in mind. I think both trainers worked really hard to kind of think through that game plan and play through it. But it's a tense match, it's a loser's round match, and it was definitely a slightly better endgame there, I think, for Miguel, having access to the Colossal, and just being able to take a huge knockout, instead of Gmax Volcalith, which, yes, he didn't get Steam Engine, yes, it was a little bit risky to maybe try and do that when something like an Earthquake could have came out from the Landorus, but it was next to the Torkoal that had to be respectful of that, and that turn was that was kind of the win condition there, was making sure you could Volcalith and get rid of the Torkoal and get the extra damage down on Landorus.
Right. I definitely feel like Miguel set themselves up for success for the end game there. And even without the Steam Engine, just like able to use Colossal to such great prowess to be able to finish off that very first game. But when it comes down to Will's positioning, I still feel like Will put themselves in a really great position to be able to take the game, but maybe some of the targeting was a little bit off, not taking out that Rillaboom when given the opportunity to with those max air streams. I feel like you called that correctly during the game, that was a point where I feel like Will could have maybe turned the tide a little bit more in his own favor.
Yeah, he left the Rillaboom on the field for a long time and let it switch out and let it come back in, and I just think maybe identifying that as a bigger threat could have been a difference maker in this game, right? Like, you know, we all know how much Grassy Glide does. We all know you can look at the team sheet and see it's got the choice band as well, so just be a little more respectful of that, I think, in the games, and taking that knowledge and going, okay, well, it can't protect, it either has to switch out, and whatever switches in is going to get hit really hard, just seemed to be, you know, staying a step behind from Will. But, you know, that said, it's quite brassy of Miguel to just keep it in and just keep trying to, you know, fire out those Grassy Glides wherever he can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's jump into this game number 2, see how it potentially concludes. If it is going to be Miguel taking home this win for the set, or if Will can tie up the series and bring us into another game number 3 for our series today. We will see that Regieleki and Porygon 2 once again come out from Will, but this time around, Miguel is switching things up a little bit, brings out that Urshifu and Colossal right away. Can go ahead and go for something like an Aqua Jet into the Colossal to be able to pop the weakness policy, as well as a Steam Engine, or just play things a little bit safer. It really depends on how Miguel is feeling in this lead situation.
This is a very aggressive lead from Miguel. I mean, he can set up the perfect combo, and I don't think there's all that much that Will could do about it, right? He can maybe try and set up a Trick Room to say, well, you're going to get a crazy good Steam Engine boost. I'm just going to then punish you for that. But it's also just a huge amount of damage that comes down. Urshifu not activating the combo just yet, playing it safe. And I think both trainers here recognizing, or both Pokemon recognizing this might not be the perfect turn. And yeah, just seeing exactly what goes down.
Ooh, well, this
Trick
is
Room
really good. I feel like the
makes the
protect was
decisions a
super
little
good.
harder. Yeah, I mean, I like this play. I think setting up Trick Room is fine here. But once again, and this is the second time it's happened today, Trick Room and Regieleki, you've got the fastest Pokemon available. Why are you Trick Rooming next to it and basically saying, well, this isn't going to be in the game? Like, the not letting it Volt Switch out by double protecting there, absolutely massive. And is now causing a huge problem.
Yeah, but I feel like this is still a problem for Miguel, too, because you can't go for that weakness policy steam engine activation combo that you might want to. Because the Trick Room is active, it's going to make you super, super slow on the field instead of making you one of the fastest Pokemon. So you're going to see the Urshifu switch out here for Miguel, with the Indeedee now coming out onto the field next to this Colossal, maybe to try to keep it a little bit safer. But you're absolutely right about the double protect being so smart, because now Regieleki is stuck on the field next to this Porygon 2, as Porygon 2 does go for the tri-attack here into the Indeedee that just switched in. We'll bring it to about half, but here comes a huge move coming out from the Colossal, but it does not enough to knock out this Regieleki.
No, it's not anywhere near enough, and this Indeedee taking another hit, surprisingly bulky there, being able to handle that one just fine if you're the Indeedee, but just kind of a switch in for a little bit of a reposition, I think. Not really here to apply much pressure or cause many problems in that regard.
Yeah, I wonder what this Pokemon's going to be. I'm assuming, yeah, something really slow like the Torkoal, just because the Trick Room is active right now. Will be able to set up the weather, but I feel like that also kind of plays in Miguel's favor too, because the Colossal's on the field.
Right, I mean, this Colossal is going to capitalize off that really, really handily and say, you know what, that's fine, set that up, I don't care, I'll just do more damage, thank you very much. And of course take less damage if at some point in the game, you know, as soon as the Trick Room ends and we've still got the sun up, that I do want to set up the Steam Engine weakness policy and go from there. So certainly a tricky one and a tough time to be bringing Torkoal. Looks like Torkoal's pretty okay with the board position. I'd imagine this is going to be the Dynamax choice. I think the very, very low health Indeedee would shock me a little bit.
Yeah, I think that shocked everybody, but what a flex, right? to
Right.
Dynamax, very low health Indeedee, but yes, Colossal makes a lot more sense given the situation, as Indeedee is going to go for Follow Me here, just to keep that Colossal safe once again in case any single targeted attacks do come through, like this Earth Power that is going to do just enough to knock out this Indeedee.
Yeah, I like that. Very smart to get the Follow Me in as a way to help out this Colossal. I mean, we always say it, Colossal definitely needs some help to get on by, and getting that redirect in, really, really good. Here comes, you know, another issue, I think, in this is now a knockout. One of the best Trick Room attackers that Will has is gone, and the amount of residual damage he's taking is absolutely bananas, and is going to be one way to really deal with something like the Porygon. So, yeah, the Indeedee came in. It looked like it took too much damage, but it absolutely did its job in that time.
Yeah, and it being able to hang on to be able to use the Follow Me for the next turn was just so critical, because it took away so much of that pressure from Colossal. And I feel like that trade just worked out so much better for Miguel, because you still have the Colossal sitting at very, very healthy HP, and you took out the main damage dealer on Will's team.
Right, I mean, Will's now looking kind of a tricky choice. He does have Landorus as the last Pokemon. This is another one of those Pokemon that this might not be the perfect thing to have in a Trick Room. You know, especially if it's going to take residual damage every single turn, and the Intimidate's not super helpful. It's got to be careful as well. It doesn't want to activate the weakness policy. It's a huge issue for it. It just can't activate the weakness policy like that. That said, I mean, it's still kept a little bit safer by the sun from Torkoal. But overall, I think this Colossal is in a phenomenal position right now.
Yeah, you can double into this Landorus here and really do some work on it. We haven't seen Dynamax yet coming out from Will, so this also might be a time that we see the Dynamax come out for Landorus, maybe?
I think you have to. I think you absolutely have to Dynamax the Landorus here and get it as much health as it possibly can, and you know, try and kind of push on that way. So it's really the only option he's got at this juncture. Yeah, it's got to be done if you want to stay in this game.
Yeah, hopefully that's going to be enough of a health boost to be able to work through this double into the Landorus that we just saw Miguel lock in. I'm not sure it's going to be enough, though, especially when you've got those super effective attacks with those critical hits from the Unseen Fist ability on Urshifu. But it's going to be Tri-Attack first coming out from Porygon. Wow, that does a lot there. No status condition, though, so Urshifu should be able to fire off an attack. But it's the Max Flare first coming out from Miguel's Colossal before we do see this Landorus go for the Max Quake. It's going right into Colossal, though, and wow, a huge knockout here.
Yeah, the Max Quake, certainly enough to get a knockout and not activate weakness policy, because guess what? It got knocked out in exchange. So, yeah, not the best turn for Colossal there, really not getting much damage down. But don't forget, it's already set up. It's a Volcolith and is able to do that little bit of damage between. That said, I mean, the sun's still up, don't forget. And yeah, even with these critical hits, this Landorus is probably feeling pretty good about its chances at taking these hits comfortably. So the Dynamax here from Will is bringing him very much back into this game as best as he possibly can. But yeah, the G-Max Volcolith is going to start to add up on both of these Pokemon and cause problems.
I mean, Landorus was at full health at the beginning of this turn, and now look where it's sitting. It's at a third of its HP. That's definitely not where this Landorus wants to be sitting, especially in the face of this Rillaboom that can just go ahead and set up the terrain and click that Grassy Glide.
Oh, absolutely, and there's no way to comfortably change the terrain here, I don't think. So yeah, it's basically a case of just keep on Grassy Gliding for a little bit, get the damage down, and go from there. Like, once you've got that in play, then you can control the board kind of just through where your Grassy Glide is going, and anything that tries to protect as well, you could probably hit as well with Unseen Fist off this Urshifu. So it does get a little bit harder to try and stall out the end game when you've got an Urshifu and something just applying constant pressure like Rillaboom.
Yeah, well, Detect comes out first. We did see Miguel hover over that before. And here comes the Grassy Glide, which is going to make sure that Landorus does not get a chance to move this turn, or for the rest of this game.
There's Grassy Glide showing just how powerful it can be, ignoring all of the effort that Trick Room put in a number of instances. And yeah, Rillaboom's going to get caught by an Ice Beam for its troubles, but it's still alive and able to land another Grassy Glide next turn, which should be kind of the final way to deal with it. I mean, that said, to Will's credit, he's got both of Miguel's remaining two Pokemon nice and low, but you know, he's back. The Trick Room ends, so this is like the perfect time for Regieleki, but Regieleki is facing down a couple of Pokemon feeling pretty good about, you know, being able to pick it off nice and early.
Yeah,
it took so much damage early on, and you know, the Grassy Glide's going to do it at any point.
Aqua Jet might be able to do it here, and then Grassy Glide into the Porygon 2 should be enough to clean up this game.
Well, I mean, you keep Grassy Gliding into the Regieleki knowing that it won't be given a chance to do that, and then you just make sure you land a fighting attack into the Porygon, because the Trick Room's done. Then the Porygon, you know, shouldn't be able to play around that. I mean, if the Porygon 2 can take it and Trick Room, then slightly different game, but I don't really see this being too much of a problem. The Rillaboom, we say, just keep the pressure on with spread attacks and go from there. Well, spreading the attacks out, I think.
Well, it's going to be a double into the Porygon 2. Maybe one of these... reading the Protect coming out from the Regieleki potentially for the Protect and Trick Room. But that's going to spell disaster here, as it is going to be Grassy Glide first coming out, and then just a quick follow-up into the Porygon 2. Should be able to knock it out here, and it is going to be enough, even though Urshifu is going to have those stat drops. You dropped the Porygon 2, which was one of the biggest threats on Will's team.
Right, the Porygon 2 was key there into maybe trying to find some answer. And Regieleki just getting caught by the G-Max Volcolith there between turns. So the Protect, not enough to do anything. I think Will maybe knowing exactly what was going on and knowing that he, you know, couldn't get there, just seeing if Porygon 2 could maybe try and do something for itself.